how important this conversation is and and the amount of investment that we're making both as in BESE and around the state, just because. And then I think the critical question here today is, are we looking at outcomes, in a consistent way, and are we spending our dollars the most effective way? We learned in our retreat on Monday that since we have been investing in early childhood through AG funds, that we have spent $178 million in supporting early childhood through 8G funds alone. What I'm told is that we currently spend $200 to $350 million every year on early childhood. And what I'm going to suggest is that we really don't know. We don't have a common way of looking at outcomes for all of these programs. Each program seems to have its own structure, its own way of application, its own way of outcomes. And the big question is, what is BESE's role in helping to develop with that might or might not? What's your desire and what's our role? And then how will we get there? So that really, I hope, is sort of framing the questions about today, because we make a significant investment in early childhood, yet it's real clear that we have not met our goal of having all at-risk children enrolled, and that we're unlikely to be able to receive more dollars to achieve this goal. So we're looking at the current monies that we spend, the $350 million that we spend every year on early childhood. How can we leverage that to include more children? I think this is very similar to other conversations, very similar to a conversation we had yesterday. Thank you. Mr. Romer.
Have we ever gotten all these people in the room at the same time?
Yes, we have.
And was there any results? I mean, I get frustrated. Not only do we not seem to have a coherent evaluation, although that's what we're working toward, and I appreciate that that's what we're working toward. But where is there duplication? Where, is this the most efficient? I know there are different sources of funds, and that's driving it. But why does the mayor's office run Head Start, for instance, in some places? To me, there seems to be a disconnect between these different entities to some extent. That if we had a better coordination effort, a single management effort, that in fact we could get a more efficient program in place. I could be totally wrong. I mean, I don't want to pretend to be an expert on these. I'm not. This is my 30,000-foot view of what's happening, and I know I've been frustrated when we seem to approve a lot of different pre-K related programs from different sources. And is the essence of my comments, are they wrong, or could we do better in that effort, you think? Is that a fair question?
Let me go back and say that as part of our goal number one of getting children ready for kindergarten, we at the department have pulled all of these entities together. We have representatives from DOE. The good thing about the DOE program is that LA4, Title I, and Special Ed are all under the Literacy Office. So we work, those programs are basically as coordinated as far as programmatic. We've had Robin from the BESE office, so she comes to work with us. Petrushka from the non-public school, she's working with us. We have Gail Kelso and Kyrie Wahid from DCFS. So they're all on the same team. We're all working toward that same goal of getting children ready for kindergarten. So we're on that same page. Now, whether or not our funding has been coordinated, that has not typically been done because the funding sources are different.
Sure.
We have, the Department of Education has nothing to do with Head Start other than we can work with them. Head Start money comes from Dallas and flows to a grantee, which may be the mayor's office in some areas. It may be a police jury in some areas. It may be a local school district. But the state of Louisiana itself, the Department of Ed, cannot be the Head Start grantee. It has to go to other grantees. But we're trying to work with the Head Start Collab office to make sure that we're getting our programs together and that we're addressing some of the same standards. We have people that are working with some Head Start centers that are actually going into the Head Start centers providing technical assistance. We've invited Head Start to our trainings for early letters so that they can get trained and therefore go back and train their teachers. We've invited Resource and Referral, who provide professional development for the early childhood, early care centers so that they can go back. But they're separate systems at this point.
All right, so the main points to consider today are really about outcomes, cost efficiencies, and then a question of whether it makes sense to have a unified strategy for the state for all of these various programs that are striving to achieve the same sorts of things with kids.
I want to give you a few demographics. In 2010-11, we had approximately 63,000 4-year-olds in the state of Louisiana, and 42,000 of those children were identified as at risk. 65% of our 4-year-olds in the state are served in some kind of a 4-year-old program. I know that some of you were on this board when in 2008 Louisiana passed Act 876 guaranteeing universal access to pre-K by 2013. We know that we have not been able to totally fund that, even though it's in the Act and we would like to, it's still, we're not able to fund it. The different programs that basically are touching a lot of our 4-year-olds, in the LDOE, we house 3 programs: the LA4 program, the Title I students, and the special needs children that are of this age. The BESE office, of course, houses the 8G program. The governor's office houses the non-public school early childhood development program. In the Department of Children and Family Services, we have Head Start, which is really a separate entity unto itself, and then the Child Care Assistance Program. We have some outcomes, and we have both short-term and long-term outcomes. First of all, our short-term outcome is to meet Goal 1, to have our children enter kindergarten ready to learn. Then we want to improve our academic performance in elementary school, both on the 3rd grade I-LEAP, the 4th grade LEAP, all the way up through the 8th grade LEAP. And we have seen that with the children who started pre-K. Our first cohort now is out in 8th grade, and we saw good results, and I think that you have some information on that, and Dr. Jones is going to share a little more. Our long-term outcomes are higher graduation rates, and we know that those children who have had pre-K, who have excelled, been on benchmark or above on the Dibbles test, are those kids that are moving on and are able to be successful at basic or above on our LEAP and I-LEAP, and are going to have the most likelihood of graduating. They also have higher levels of post-secondary participation, and a major piece that I feel is critically important is lower rates of entry into the criminal justice system.
What Dr. Laster just named, do those seem like the right outcomes? Are we only looking at academic outcomes for these programs? Is the board wanting us to look broader than that? We would love to get your feedback and just create a space here where you can provide your initial reactions.
We do and should have a louder voice, and I appreciate that we're trying to collaborate more. Collaboration's not enough. That money list, there's $350 million we're spending in the project you listed here today, and we have kids who still aren't getting access to K4, and those that are getting access, we don't have a common evaluation instrument in place amongst these groups. We can't afford it any longer. Our kids can't afford it because they're not prepared for school, and we can't afford it financially. Now, I don't know if we need to call our senators and our governor and everyone else and get them in the room and get them to agree, but it's obscene. Okay, it's obscene for our kids, and it's obscene for our taxpayers.
Today the subject was early childhood, and we looked at all of the services and all the different service providers of early childhood in Louisiana, and BESE's role, BESE's current role, and what BESE's prospective role should be in making sure that all children enter kindergarten, ready. Ready to Learn. So we do have a very vested interest in the success of early childhood programs all around the state. We invest, BESE does. We've invested almost $200 million in early childhood, so we obviously really believe in it. The LA4 program has been a tremendous success, but those aren't the only two programs, that exist in Louisiana. So we want to we really would love to see everyone adopt our kindergarten definition, everyone utilize our kindergarten standards, our pre-K standards, and that everyone work toward the same goal of having every child ready for kindergarten and ready to learn.
What did the report say in terms of the number of agencies that are involved in providing services and the total dollars that are spent?
Oh, that was we spend over $300 million a year, but that's of state and federal dollars educating early 4-year-olds. They are provided from a whole myriad of providers, everything, from you have Head Start, you have the Governor's Program, you have the AG program, LA4 program, you have private providers, home providers. And so we have a wonderful diverse delivery of services. What we need to do, what we'd like to see is some type of consistent assessment at the end of so that we know where children are when they enter school.
One of the issues that has been talked about for a long time is universal access. What did this morning's forum tell you about the possibility, realistically, of that ever happening in Louisiana?
Well, one very exciting thing that was brought out was that in Missouri, that they are able to provide basically early childhood services for about $1,800 less than we spend on average in our state. If we were able to bring our cost delivery per unit to that level, we would be able to provide universal pre-K to every child in Louisiana. So we're going to study that model. We're going to look at it. It's not the amount of dollars, it's how they're being spent. And because I think we're all realistically know that we're not going to be able to provide universal pre-K with additional dollars in the next year or two. We're going to have to try to provide it with the resources that we have now. So we're going to be looking really hard at the Missouri model.